She saved lives daily except mine. That's what I told myself as I watched her slip her shoes off by the door, her hair still tied in that tight ICU knot. Smiling, exhausted, she'd drop her bag with a theatrical sigh and collapse onto the couch, smelling like sanitizer and secrets. To everyone else, my wife was a miracle worker in white scrubs, the kind of woman you trusted with your last breath. I believed it, too, until the details didn't add up. The shift schedules were the first red flag. She'd say, "Double tonight, don't wait up," then stumble home at dawn. Curious, I called the hospital once just to hear her voice. I told myself, "No, sir, she's not on rotation tonight," the machine chirped, far too cheerful. I told myself it was a clerical error. I learned to swallow doubt like a bitter pill, let it dissolve slow. Then there were the scents, a trace of cologne warming her scrubs, cheap and insistent, nothing like the sterile fog of disinfectant. Sometimes she'd change before coming home, her work clothes balled tight at the bottom of the laundry hamper. The water would run and run, but the perfume clung to her skin like a diagnosis she refused to name. I invented excuses for her. Maybe a patient's husband hugged her. Maybe she worked late in palliative, comforting the dying the only way she knew how. But doubt is a disease, and it metastasized fast. She was always tired, always giving too much at work. Her phone was a graveyard of silenced notifications. When she'd turn over in the night, I'd see her lips moving prayers, or names she never whispered to me. It all seemed forgivable until the motel receipt. I found it tucked behind a prescription pad while looking for spare change, a crumpled slip marked with last week's date and a 12-hour window. The address wasn't close to the hospital. My stomach flipped, but my mind insisted on denial. I told myself it was for a grieving family, perhaps a mercy room for the relatives of the dead. She came home later that night, smiling too brightly, kissing me on the forehead. I let her tuck herself into my side, as if nothing was wrong, as if her uniform wasn't stained with someone else's touch. The first time I saw the motel receipt, I told myself it was for a grieving family. But grief, I was starting to realize, was a living thing. It set up shop quietly, carving little rooms in my heart, one white lie at a time. Denial is the strongest medicine, but it only masks the pain. Suspicion, on the other hand, is like an 4 drip of adrenaline. Once it's in your system, you never come down. I told myself I was just a concerned husband. That was the first lie. Insomnia settled into our marriage with sly persistence. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling fan as it made lazy rotations, and listen to her get ready for her late shift. She always moved quietly, careful not to wake me, except she must have known I was already awake, eyes wide open in the dark, silently rehearsing the questions I'd never dare to ask. One night, around 3 a.m., her phone glowed on the dresser. She'd left it unlocked. I knew I shouldn't look, I also knew I would. Her notifications were scrubbed clean, but the call log was a battlefield, numbers with no names, timestamps bleeding into each other. Carter, M.D. His name always at strange hours, never during daylight. Always brief, always followed by silence. I memorized the digits, a masochistic keepsake. She'd come home smelling faintly of aftershave, her lips chapped, her eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. I noticed the changes, the way she started showering the second she got in, the fresh set of scrubs that appeared at the back of the closet, the sudden need to keep her hospital ID in her purse. She'd leave the laundry for me, but her uniforms were always washed separately, always. The hospital records became my next obsession. I called the nurse's station, feigning a relative's concern. "Is Anna working tonight?" I'd ask, voice trembling. "I just want to make sure she's safe." The nurse on the line sounded bored, distracted. "She's not scheduled." "Want me to leave a message?" I thanked her and softly hung up, my heart thudding in my ears. Of course, I never confronted Anna. Not yet. Instead, I became an investigator in my own house. I started going through her things, her nursing bag, her meticulously organized first aid kit. I counted the syringes, catalogued the vials. 2 were gone: morphine and fentanyl. Maybe she'd used them for a patient, I told myself, but she never logged it in her record book. In the hospital world, those mistakes could kill a career. In ours, they killed trust. My hands shook as I replaced everything just so, terrified I'd be caught, desperate to know more. I started learning her tells: the way she'd look past me when she lied, the way her foot twitched when I mentioned the word pharmacy. Paranoia is a slow poison, turning love into surveillance. But I needed to know. One Saturday, she returned home after a supposed double shift. She looked radiant, cheeks flushed, eyes bright, as if she'd just stepped out of a spa instead of an ICU. She moved to kiss me, but something in me recoiled. I imagined other hands, other voices, other secrets pressed to her skin. I saw it all and said nothing. I let her believe I was still fooled. That night, as she slipped into bed, her hand brushed my forehead. "You're burning up," she murmured. "You need rest. Or maybe a checkup." Her tone was clinical, detached. The same voice I'd heard her use on broken strangers in the ER, people she'd never see again. I wondered if I'd become just another patient to her, someone to diagnose, to sedate, to forget. I tried, once, to break through. "Anna, do you still love me?" She blinked, surprised. "Of course. Why would you ask something like that?" "Because the word caught in my throat. Because your eyes never meet mine. Because you flinch when I touch you. Because your phone is your lifeline and I'm just background noise." Instead, I swallowed my doubts. "You've been distant. Work's been rough on you." She gave a tired smile. "You're just stressed. You always worry. It's not good for your heart, babe." She turned away, her shoulder a cold mountain between us. That was when I understood the cruelest irony. I was being gaslit by a professional, someone who made a living by convincing people everything would be okay, even as their world shattered. Anna was a nurse. She could look you in the eye and tell you the pain was normal, the fever would break, the wound would heal, then walk away as you bled out behind the curtain. But I knew my own symptoms. I knew the difference between healing and neglect. I could feel the oxygen leaving our marriage, replaced by something heavier and poisonous. So I did what any desperate man would. I followed her. She left just after midnight, covering for sick calls, she said. I waited, counted to 30, then slipped out behind her, adrenaline flowing cold in my veins. I tailed her car at a distance, headlights off, feeling equal parts spy and tragic fool. She didn't drive to the hospital. She didn't even head in that direction. That was the night I realized, I wasn't paranoid. I was right. And right then, knowing what I'd find, was worse than all the lies that came before. Cars look different at night. Headlights blur, license plates disappear, and even the familiar seems alien beneath street lamps that flicker like warning signs. I followed Anna at a careful distance, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my breath loud in the silence. Paranoia gnawed at me, but hope chewed harder. Maybe she was on an emergency call. Maybe she was covering for someone. Maybe. Her taillights finally blinked red outside a luxury high-rise across town, far from the hospital, far from anything we'd ever needed. She parked with a casualness that gutted me, the ease of someone who'd done this before. There was no hesitation in her step as she walked to the entrance, never glancing back. I drove past, hands shaking, then circled the block until the adrenaline receded enough to let me think. I parked beneath a stunted tree, sweat slicking my skin despite the cold. The building loomed, all glass and steel, each window a different square of someone else's life. At the lobby's edge, a concierge sat reading a magazine, oblivious to infidelities and betrayals slipping past his desk each night. I'd brought binoculars. I don't remember deciding to just that they were in the glove compartment, dusty from some old hiking trip, now pressed against my face as I searched the floors. I found her by her silhouette first, a figure in white, long hair let down, pacing a penthouse lit soft and warm. Then he joined her. Carter. Even from a distance, his confidence radiated, shirt sleeves rolled, hair perfect, a man who expected the world to open for him. They didn't waste time. Anna stepped into his arms, her movements practiced, as if this was her real home. They stood close by the glass, not caring who might see, unafraid of city eyes. She laughed clear, bright, a sound I'd all but forgotten. He kissed her like a prescription written in secrets. When they moved to the couch, I felt my face flush, a heat of shame and fury. Through the binoculars, everything was clinical and cruel. His hands found her like reading a patient chart, confident and efficient. She responded with a precision I'd never witnessed, her body arching, her breath catching, her hands gripping him like the rails of an ICU bed. She moaned, loud and unashamed, a sound that stabbed through me. It was as if she was following a textbook, demonstrating perfect technique, emotion measured out by the milliliter. I thought of all the nights she returned to me, damp hair and tired eyes, curling wordlessly into bed. Had she ever made those sounds for me? Or was I just another routine, an afterthought, a checklist? The scene played on, mechanical and obscene. I watched her undress, watched her skin glow in a stranger's lamplight. She smiled at him the way she once smiled at me back when we were new, before the rot set in. For a moment, I saw our wedding night, Anna laughing, hair wild, clutching my face as if I were the only man in the world. That memory felt like a fever dream now, flickering and unreal. Something inside me crumpled. My throat burned, stomach twisting. I stumbled from the car, doubling over in the gutter. My wedding ring caught the streetlight, a useless, cold circle pressed against my palm. I vomited into the bushes, dry heaves racking my chest, tears stinging my eyes. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel until the world stopped spinning. Above me, in a penthouse behind mirrored glass, my wife let another man heal wounds I didn't know she had. My hands shook. My mind buzzed with questions I hated. Did she love him? Did she ever really love me? When I finally drove away, Anna still hadn't looked out the window. Neither had Carter. I left the binoculars on the passenger seat, sticky with sweat. I drove home in silence. That night, Anna crawled beneath our sheets, her skin faintly perfumed, her body heavy with exhaustion. She curled up beside me, unaware. I didn't move. I watched her sleep, her face soft and peaceful, untouched by guilt. But I knew now. I knew exactly whose hand she craved. And I knew what I had to do next. I vomited in the bushes, my wedding ring glinting in the streetlight. The sound of her keys always used to mean safety, her homecoming, her presence, the little rituals that stitched our evenings together. Now it sounded like a warning. I watched her from the kitchen window as she crossed the yard, face illuminated by the porch light, a ghost in white scrubs and shadowed eyes. She breezed in, dropping her bag with practiced exhaustion. "Long shift," she said, voice trailing into a yawn. She moved to the fridge, pouring herself wine, pouring herself distance. I wondered if the glass would tremble in her hand if I told her I knew. But it didn't. She drank in slow, steady sips, her back to me, humming a tune I recognized from our first anniversary before everything soured. I waited until she settled on the couch, phone glowing in her lap. She didn't notice me watching her, eyes glazed over, scrolling through some private world where I was already erased. I saw her thumb pause on a message. His name flashed on the screen, Carter. She smiled. Intimate, secretive. That smile used to be mine. I sat across from her, every muscle tight, heart thudding so loudly I thought she'd hear. The words pressed at my lips. I'd rehearsed this confrontation 100 times in my head, always gentler than I felt now. "Who's dar, Carter?" I said, quiet, but with an edge that made her look up. Her eyes narrowed, that clinical mask slipping into place. She laughed high, brittle. "You're jealous of Carter now. He's just a doctor, babe. Works cardiology." She sipped again. "God, you're paranoid." I let the silence boil, waiting for her to explain, but she didn't. She only stared, daring me to escalate. My hands balled into fists. "I saw you," I said, voice trembling. "At his place. I saw everything." Her face hardened, eyes glinting with something cold and surgical. "So you're spying on me now? How pathetic." She stood, moving toward her bag with the stealth of a predator. "You want the truth? Fine. Carter's more of a man than you'll ever be." Something in me snapped. Months of self-doubt, humiliation, nights spent awake tracing her betrayals on the ceiling. I stepped toward her, tears burning, my vision narrowing to the little purse she clutched. She fished through it, pulling out her phone, then something small and shining, a scalpel, her name etched into the handle from years in the ICU. She twirled it between her fingers, eyes never leaving mine. A threat or a nervous habit, I couldn't tell. I saw myself reflected in the blade, warped and desperate. "You have no idea what I sacrifice, what I see every day," she spat. "You sit here with your little suspicions while I keep people alive." My words caught in my throat, all my anger choking into a sob. "You killed us. You killed this." I gestured to the empty room, the wine stains, the marriage crumbling around us. She lunged, swift, practiced, clinical. The scalpel's edge nicked my forearm, a hot flash of pain blooming down to my wrist. I jerked back, shocked. She didn't flinch. Her eyes were wild now, the line between caregiver and destroyer erased. "Don't be dramatic," she snapped, wiping the blade on her scrub pants. "You're not dying." But blood pooled between us, thick, dark, seeping into the rug. It spread in widening arcs, the color of the wine we drank on our first date, the shade of everything we'd lost but pretended not to notice. She stared at the mess, lip curled, as if the sight disgusted her. Or maybe she was disappointed that I'd finally bled for her, that it was so easy. For a moment, we stood in silence, the TV mumbling in the background, the world still turning outside our shattered bubble. The pain in my arm was nothing compared to the ache in my chest, the realization that she could cut me so easily, and never apologize. I pressed a kitchen towel to the wound, the fabric soaking up our story, white turning to crimson. She poured herself another glass, back already turned. I saw her shoulders shake, but there was no sob. Only exhaustion or rage. I couldn't tell anymore. Blood pooled between us like the wine we drank on our first date. It didn't feel like an ending yet. It felt like a pause, a breath drawn before the next incision, the moment before the flatline. There was a stillness after the blood, a hush so thick I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, the distant hum of the fridge. Anna's glass sat on the coffee table, a crescent of lipstick clinging to the rim. My arm throbbed, the pain sharp and insistent, but it was nothing compared to the ache in my head, the thought that everything I'd built was now a hollow shell, echoing with a stranger's laughter. We barely spoke for days. She came and went, always in fresh scrubs, always smelling like antiseptic, always untouchable. The cut on my arm scabbed over, raw and ugly, a line she had drawn to keep me at bay. I started talking to myself in the quiet hours, rehearsing apologies, accusations, confessions. None of them felt true anymore. One night, the power went out for an hour. I lit a candle and watched the shadows play across our wedding photo, the one where Anna leaned into me, eyes shining, a smile I hadn't seen in years. Did she ever mean it? Or had she been practicing for someone else, even then? She came home late, tossing her keys onto the table with a clatter. Her eyes swept over the bandage on my arm. You should have gone to urgent care, she said, clinical as ever. I almost laughed, a dry, broken sound. She poured herself a drink, refusing to sit, her body tight with anger or fear. I couldn't tell anymore. Why, Anna? I asked quietly. Why him? Why this? She rolled her eyes, a flash of contempt. Spare me. You want a confession? Fine. I was bored. You don't excite me. You never did. Her words stung, a quick jab to the chest. After everything. She cut me off, voice rising, brittle. Don't pretend you didn't see this coming. You suffocate me with your need. You act like love is a disease only you can diagnose. I felt the world tilt, the floor falling out from under me. My heart hammered, my breaths shallow. I remembered our vows, her voice, soft and trembling, promising to cherish, heal, and hold. I remembered the way she touched my face with gloved tenderness the first time we met, her hands cool and steady after a night shift. I remembered believing she could save me from loneliness, from myself. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. The argument escalated, words sharpening into scalpels, flung between us with surgical precision. She listed my failings, dissected our marriage with the cold detachment of a post-mortem. I tried to find words that would hurt her as much as she hurt me, but nothing landed. My hands trembled with rage and helplessness. She moved to leave, purse slung over her shoulder, keys jangling, a final retreat. I blocked the doorway, desperate, wild. You don't get to walk away. Not this time. She laughed low, cruel. What are you going to do? Hurt me? You don't have it in you. I snapped. Years of humiliation and betrayal, of quiet dinners eaten in silence, of being treated like a patient instead of a partner, all of it erupted at once. I grabbed the nearest thing, her stethoscope, left coiled on the counter, and lunged. She struggled, hands clawing at my arms, knees buckling beneath her. Her perfume filled my nose, sharp and sweet and suffocating. The world narrowed to the pressure in my hands, the frantic beat of her heart beneath my grip, the desperate hush of her last breaths. Her eyes widened, searching for mercy. Her lips moved, shaping words I could barely hear. You were never my type. Her body went slack, the fight leaking out of her like air from a torn lung. The stethoscope slipped from my shaking hands, thudding dully to the floor. I sank beside her, heart racing, body trembling. I waited for her to wake, to shout, to scold me for being weak. I waited for forgiveness. 8 hours passed. The sun slid across the wall, painting the room in gold, then gray. The blood on the carpet dried to rust. I sat beside her body for 8 hours, waiting for her to apologize. She never did. The silence was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Courtrooms always looked sterile on television, mahogany benches, solemn faces, the gavel's distant echo. In real life, it was just fluorescent lights and the faint tang of sweat. The jury's eyes flicked toward me, then away, as if I carried contagion. I sat in a scratchy suit the state provided, hands cuffed in my lap. Anna's ring still pressed against my skin, an indentation I could not scrub away. They called her colleagues first nurses, residents, orderlies from St. Mary's. Each took the stand and conjured a saint. She was gentle. She'd hold a patient's hand long after her shift, one nurse said, dabbing her eyes beneath thick mascara. She brought me soup when I had the flu, a resident offered, voice trembling. The ICU chief's voice broke outright. Anna was the best of us. She gave everything. The judge listened, stone-faced, but I saw the jurors' lips pinch with sympathy. Photographs filled the screens, Anna smiling at a child's bedside, Anna mid-laugh at a staff party, Anna holding a newborn, her stethoscope draped like a medal. Her hair shone, her eyes sparkled, her white coat gleamed. I remembered the blood on her hands, the scalpel glinting in kitchen light. The prosecution gave them the angel. I was left clutching the devil. When the defense called me, the room seemed to tilt. My lawyer squeezed my arm, whispered, "Just tell your story." But words dried up in my throat. The prosecutor's questions drilled into me, their rhythm relentless. "You suspected infidelity. Did you confront her before the night in question?" "Yes." "And she denied it?" "She laughed at me." "That made you angry?" "Yes, no, I was desperate. Desperate enough to kill." The word hung foreboding and final. I stared at my hands, remembering her perfume, her last words. "I didn't want to." "But you did." The prosecutor painted me as a jealous, unstable husband, driven mad by his wife's devotion to her career, his masculinity shrunken by her competence. She listed the evidence: the stethoscope, the bruises, the defensive wounds on Anna's arms. Each detail twisted my intentions, each photo a scalpel blade against my reputation. My lawyer tried to humanize me. He was a loving husband, blindsided by betrayal. He was pushed to the edge. The jury stared, unblinking. Maybe they pitied me, but nobody wanted to understand. Anna's friends wept from the gallery. Her mother collapsed when the autopsy report was read, a flutter of hands, a cry like an animal's. The courtroom stilled, everyone waiting for redemption, or at least remorse. I sat silent, numb, the world fuzzy around the edges. In closing arguments, the prosecutor's voice rose. Anna was a healer. She brought life into darkness. She was taken by the very man who vowed to cherish her. Jealousy and rage are not excuses. You must find him guilty, for her sake, for the sake of every silent victim. My lawyer's summation sounded pale. Tragedy isn't always criminal. Sometimes marriages die before people do. Sometimes pain makes monsters out of anyone. I watched the jury file out, their faces stiffened by tears and fatigue. 12 strangers weighed my life in their hands. I searched for a sign: doubt, sympathy, anything. Anna's photograph stared back at me from the evidence table. The deliberation took 12 minutes. They sent for us, faces grim, verdict already written in their eyes. "Guilty," the foreman said. "Just like her." Handcuffs bit into my wrists. As they led me away, Anna's mother sobbed. The judge nodded once, almost kindly, before banging his gavel. On the walls, sunlight flickered. I looked for Anna's face in the crowd, half expecting her to appear, stethoscope around her neck, ready to diagnose me one last time. But the only thing left was silence, and the shadow of a verdict I'd known was coming since the night she first lied. You learn the rhythms of prison the way you learn the rhythms of a failing heart: what to eat, what to avoid, when to speak, whom to ignore. Day 1043. I started counting when I realized it was the only thing they couldn't take from me. The days blur together, smearing into an endless gray corridor, punctuated by shouts and alarms and the hollow scrape of my food tray. They call me Doc, a cruel nickname for someone who never finished med school, who only learned medicine by watching shadows in the kitchen. The guards eye me warily. The other inmates leave space on the benches. I became infamous after I stitched up a gang lieutenant's forearm with nothing but a sharpened toothbrush, thread from my mattress, and the memory of Anna's hands. He never thanked me, but word spread. I'm not to be touched. Sometimes, late at night, I hear my cellmate whispering prayers. He's just a shape on the other bunk, thin and trembling. I wonder if Anna would have comforted him, if she would have pressed his hand and lied, "You'll be okay." I don't pray. There's no absolution here, only survival and ghosts. Anna visits in dreams and in steam. She appears behind the fogged glass of the showers, her hair dripping, eyes enormous. Sometimes she's smiling, inviting me in. Other times she's silent, watching my every move, her lips stitched shut with invisible thread. I flinch at her presence, but I never speak to her. There's nothing left to say. The prison doctor once asked about my nightmares. "You scream almost every night," he said, scribbling notes on a flimsy clipboard. I shrugged, refusing to give him what he wanted: a confession, a wound he could prod. I let him prescribe pills I never take. I want to feel everything. The pain is proof I'm not yet dead. I find strange comfort in the routine of tending wounds. In the yard, I patch up split lips and broken noses, disinfecting with smuggled vodka and a practiced hand. Some inmates thank me with cigarettes or extra food. Some just nod, eyes wary. They respect what they don't understand. They fear quiet men with steady hands. Letters arrive sometimes. Anna's mother writes in tight, angry script, demanding explanations I'll never give. My own family has faded into silence, a self-imposed exile. I don't blame them. Who would want to remember me? The guards talk about Anna in hushes. She was pregnant, I heard, one whispers. Murdered in cold blood. They don't know the details. They fill the gaps with their own nightmares. I hear Anna humming in the pipes, giggling in the rattle of keys, whispering in the dark. Sometimes I wake and my cellmate is staring at me, wide-eyed, as if he's seen her too. I mark the passing of time with scars, tiny notches carved beneath my tongue, never visible, never counted by anyone but me. I've memorized the way the sun slants through the tiny window, the exact moment each shadow falls. The world outside has become a rumor, a fiction. In here, I am immortal in my regret. Every day at noon, I stand in line for medication, eyes on the floor, mind drifting. I see Anna's face in the tile grout, her hands reaching, always just beyond my grasp. There's nothing left of her but memories and the bitter aftertaste of loss. But she lingers, persistent as an infection, refusing to let go. Sometimes I wake up screaming, her perfume in my nostrils, certain she's just beyond the bars. I press my face to the cold steel, searching the morning fog for forgiveness, or perhaps just oblivion. But the dead do not forgive. They only haunt. It had been months since I'd received anything but legal paperwork and threats from Anna's family when a delicate envelope arrived, thin as tissue, smelling faintly of antiseptic. The return address was scrawled in looping blue ink: Street, Mary's Hospital. My name on the front looked foreign, a stranger's identity. Inside, a single page and a photograph. The photo was faded, printed from a cheap inkjet, Anna in her scrubs, a hand resting on her gently swollen belly. I stared at it for a long time, unable to feel the weight of what it meant. The letter was in a feminine hand, the kind that charted vitals and signed off on doses. Dear Mr. Bowen, I was your wife's friend. I don't expect you remember me. I'm not writing out of pity or vengeance. I want you to know something you were never given the chance to learn. Anna was pregnant when you killed her. The words slid into my mind like a needle, sharp, precise, anesthetizing. I turned the photo over and over, searching for Anna's eyes, for any sign of the truth I'd missed. Pregnant, she'd never told me. Was that growing distance in her eyes a secret I was never trusted to share? The cold in my cell deepened, settling around my bones. She only told a few of us, the letter continued, each word methodical, like an intake note. She was nervous, excited, scared. She talked often about what kind of father you would be. Maybe she lied. Maybe she was planning to leave. Maybe she wasn't sure whose it was, even then. I pressed my forehead to the cinderblock wall, the ache spreading from my scarred wrist to the center of my chest. Was the child mine? Or another secret, snug in her belly, one last thing I could never control, never heal? There is something else, the letter concluded. Her mother insisted on a paternity test. They did it after you were arrested, after the autopsy. I'm sorry. It wasn't yours. The letter fell from my hands. I stared at the cracks in the concrete, at the shadow where light tried to squeeze through the bars. The world was collapsing in reverse. First Anna, then the marriage, then the hope of fatherhood snatched away before I ever held it. A nurse visited later, her hair pulled back, the lines around her eyes etched deep by too many night shifts. She stood outside the bars, arms crossed. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "But you should know the baby would have been loved." Anna was complicated, but she was never cruel. Not to children. Her words were soft, but they pierced anyway. "Why tell me?" I rasped. She shrugged. "People deserve to know what they destroy." She left as quietly as she'd come, her footsteps echoing against tile. I sat on my bunk with the letter in my lap, the photograph fluttering to the floor. The guards watched me from their station, wary, ready for the outburst they expected would follow. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I laughed. It started as a low chuckle, then rose, louder, raw, unstoppable. The kind of laugh people hear on locked psychiatric wards, the kind that curls into tears but never quite makes it there. I laughed at Anna, at myself, at the universe's casual brutality. The guards burst in, tasers drawn. "Get down," one barked. I kept laughing, clutching my gut, the sound bouncing off the stone, ricocheting in their ears. It was the only honest noise I'd made in years. The jolt of electricity rattled through me like absolution, like a forced silence. I bit my tongue, tasting blood and memory, my body twitching as the guards pinned me. When the world stilled and they dragged me away, the letter lay crumpled on the floor, unread by anyone but me. I laughed until the guards tasered me. And after, in the darkness, the only voice I heard was Anna's, humming lullabies for a child who never belonged to me. They release you from prison in the dead hours, when the world is too groggy to remember your crimes. The gate scissored open with a metallic screech and the guard handed me a plastic bag, one wallet, one set of keys, a wedding ring I no longer wore. His eyes slid past mine, careful not to meet whatever shame or hunger stumbled out with me. "Good luck," he said, but he didn't mean it. The city outside was both familiar and unrecognizable, as if all the colors had been bled from its veins. I wandered through silence, past shuttered shops and garbage bins, the air thick with a loneliness that pressed at my chest. No one waited for me, no one cared. The world spun on, unmarked by my return. I found a room in a crumbling boarding house, the kind of place they rent by the week, no questions asked. My neighbor's radio rattled the walls, but the voices always faded to a dull ache. I sat on the edge of a stained mattress, counting the cracks in the ceiling, listening for Anna's voice in the pipes. She was always there, sometimes humming, sometimes weeping, always out of reach. Work came slow. I took the night shift at a city morgue, the only job that didn't mind who I was, or what I'd done. The nurse who hired me glanced at my hands, noted the steady fingers, nodded once. She gave me a white coat and the graveyard hours. "Don't talk much, do you?" she said. I shook my head. "Good. The dead don't need conversation." Each evening, I slipped between metal drawers, recording names and times, cataloging bodies in the cold fluorescence. Alone with the dead, I felt almost welcome. There was no judgment, no whispers, only the hum of freezers and the tick of the wall clock. I learned to see through the skin bruise patterns, needle tracks, the lingering map of other people's endings. I wondered if Anna would have called it a skill or a curse. But the dead had faces, and sometimes, in the flicker of failing lights or the peripheral blur of exhaustion, they had Anna's face. I'd close a drawer and see her eyes, glazed with accusation or longing. I'd brush a strand of hair from a corpse's cheek and catch her scent, faint perfume, antiseptic, blood. I'd pause, paralyzed, heart pounding, waiting for the illusion to evaporate. Some nights, it didn't. I'd stand in the cold, staring at a jawline I'd traced 1,000 times in memory, seeing her mapped over the faces of strangers. Men and women, old and young, they all wore her wounds, all bore her silence. I tried to will her away. I told myself she was just a symptom, a lingering infection in the mind. But grief is stubborn, and guilt is a faithful companion. Sometimes I even welcomed her. At least Anna's ghost kept me company. At least her presence gave the silence a name. Other nurses noticed my distance. Whispers swirled, "That's the one, the killer." They said it with a mix of fear and fascination, but no one asked for details. I was left alone with paperwork, and the dead. On my break, I'd stand outside the loading dock, smoke curling from my lips, watching city lights flicker in distant windows. Once I saw a woman in white cross the street, her stride too familiar, her hair the exact shade of memory. I called out, a choked syllable, but she vanished between parked cars. I stood in the cold until my fingers went numb. Sometimes, when sleep came, I dreamt I was back in the courtroom, Anna on the witness stand, her belly round, her eyes empty. She'd stare at me, silent accusation in every glance, never speaking, never offering the apology I'd waited for. I kept my ring in a matchbox beside the bed. On bad nights, I'd press it into my palm, feeling the old imprint, proof that I had once belonged, that someone had once taken my hand and called it home. The dead don't judge, they just wait. And so do I, one shift at a time, haunted and unhealed, waiting for the world to forget or forgive. They say the world is full of second chances, but that's just something the living tell themselves to sleep at night. For me, mornings are laundry and cheap coffee, the slow tumble of machines cleaning what can never be truly washed away. I go to the laundromat at dawn, when no one's there but the insomniacs, the shift workers, and the ghosts still clinging to my jacket. My hands are steady as I fold shirts, whites with whites, colors separate, Anna's old command still echoing in my head. The overhead lights flicker as I watch the dryers spin, hypnotic, relentless. Each cycle is the same: fill, spin, empty, repeat. I find comfort in the predictability, the way heat and time erase stains. I wonder if, given enough cycles, I could bleach the memory from my bones. It's always nurses here at this hour. You recognize them by the tired eyes, the habit of keeping their backs to the wall, always watching exits. This morning, a new face catches my attention, a woman in navy scrubs, her hair in a tight bun, spinning her ID card on one finger. St. Mary's Hospital, the lanyard proclaims. My heart stutters. Anna's ghost, or just coincidence? The universe loves to rhyme. She meets my gaze with a half-smile, the kind that says she knows more than she lets on. You work nights? She asks, voice soft but edged with exhaustion. Yeah, I answer, folding a shirt, pretending indifference. Morgue? She guesses. I nod. The exchange is ritual, two strangers, each holding secrets, probing for the edges of each other's wounds. She drops her laundry bag, careless, and kneels to pick up what she's spilled, a pair of scissors, gleaming, surgical steel. Reflex kicks in. I stoop, faster than I mean to, and close my hand around the scissors before she can. Our fingers brush, cold on cold, and she lets me keep them a heartbeat longer than necessary. There's a charge to it, a question unspoken. Careful, she murmurs, nurses always know where to cut. Her laugh is low, a warning or an invitation. She stands, brushing imaginary lint from her pants, staring at my hands holding her scissors as if weighing how much damage I could do, or had already done. There's no fear in her eyes, only a cool curiosity. I see Anna, I see every nurse I've ever wronged, I see a future that loops back on itself: love, betrayal, wound, suture. I slip the scissors into my pocket, feeling their weight, a reminder, a token, a burden. She watches without protest, as if daring me to use them, or to walk away. My reflection flares in the polished metal hollow eyes, gaunt cheeks, the ghost of a wedding ring fading on my finger. I see in that glint all the inevitability the world can muster. Outside, the sun breaks over the city, indifferent and bright. The nurse leaves her dryer spinning, the scent of her perfume lingering sharp, clinical, almost familiar. I count out my change, gather my shirts, and step into the morning. I know this story now. I know how it ends. Nurses always know where to cut.